The difference between a great day on the water and a day that feels like a mistake can come down to one thing: how your engine behaves. Steering failures, hard-to-start engines, and rough idle vibrations are forcing thousands of senior boaters off the water long before they're ready. Dealers know it. Mechanics whisper about it. And the pattern is the same everywhere. The wrong outboard becomes a physical threat, while the right one adds 10 more safe, relaxed years of boating. But here's the part manufacturers never admit. Only a small handful of engines are actually designed with older bodies in mind. And the differences between them are bigger than most people realize. Today, you're going to discover 10 outboards that keep senior boaters safe, and which ones quietly end their time on the water. Number 10. Suzuki DF140A. Some engines never become dockside legends, and that is exactly why certain owners keep them for years. They are the motors that start, push, and bring you home without demanding to be the main character of the day. On small offshore hulls and modest center consoles, this kind of quiet competence matters more than an exciting spec sheet. The Suzuki DF140A lives in that category, and that is precisely why a lot of senior owners like it. On a calm day, you notice how quietly it settles into a mid-range cruise. On a rough day, you notice that you are not wrestling the helm. The weight is reasonable for its class, which matters when you are trimming and tilting the motor at the end of a long outing. Owners who do not run many hours per year appreciate that the DF140A does not punish occasional use. It tends to start cleanly even after longer pauses, provided basic maintenance is kept up. Mechanics often describe it as predictable. No exotic systems, no strange behaviors at hot restart. Just a straightforward four-stroke that rewards simple care. On the used market, clean examples usually sit in a range that is still reachable for a retiree who wants to upgrade without taking on a new loan. For many older captains, this engine feels like training wheels for the rest of their boating years. Stable, forgiving, and never trying to show off. Of course, some boaters want the same sense of calm control, but in a smaller, lighter package for pontoons and skinny water skiffs, the next outboard shows how good that can really feel. Number 9. Yamaha F90. There is a particular feeling when you drop a boat into gear and the stern barely settles. The helm stays light, and nothing about the engine asks for extra effort. On lightweight aluminum skiffs and smaller pontoons, that feeling can decide whether an older captain keeps boating for another decade. It is not about top-end speed. It is about how gentle the whole package feels every time you leave the dock. That is the niche where the Yamaha F90 keeps showing up again and again. The most striking part of the F90 for many older owners is how little it asks of them. At idle, it is remarkably quiet. Vibration is modest enough that a long no-wake zone does not leave your fingertips buzzing. When you lean into the throttle, it responds smoothly instead of lunging. That smoothness is not just about comfort. It gives a sense of confidence when docking in wind or current, because small throttle inputs lead to small, predictable changes in thrust. Because the engine is physically light compared to other 70 horsepower class outboards, cable or hydraulic steering feels easier at the wheel. Trimming it up at the ramp requires less strength, especially on boats with a lighter transom. Dealers like it because it has built a reputation as a set it up correctly once, and it disappears into the background type of engine. For a retiree moving out of an old two-stroke, the F90 can feel like stepping into a car with power steering after years of manual boxes. Sooner or later, though, you bump into a hull that asks for more than 70 horses, without asking for more work from your hands and back. The next motor adds that extra shove for heavier boats, but keeps the ride so relaxed it still feels like a senior-friendly upgrade. Number 8. Mercury 94-stroke. Some motors are chosen not because they are exciting, but because they make a familiar hull feel calmer and easier to handle. They let you carry a sensible cruise without the sound of an engine straining in the background. For older boaters, that absence of drama is often worth more than a few extra miles per hour. The Mercury 94-stroke fits that description, and that is why many senior owners are quietly rediscovering it. On a 17 to 19-foot fiberglass boat, that feels like control. You can carry the boat on plane at modest revolutions per minute, often below what you would expect. Lower engine speeds mean less noise, less vibration, and less fatigue over a full day on the water. For someone whose shoulders or back are not what they used to be, that quiet, unhurried character makes a real difference. Service technicians tend to appreciate the basic durability of the design. Oil capacity and cooling passages are generous, which helps the engine stay thermally stable in hot, shallow water conditions. Older owners who only want to visit the shop once a season find that reassuring. The starting behavior is usually drama-free, cold, or hot, provided the fuel system is kept healthy. On the used market, the Mercury 94-stroke occupies a middle ground, more affordable than modern digital control showpieces, but contemporary enough that parts and knowledge are widely available. For the senior boater who wants to keep a favorite hull but tame its manners, this motor often shows up as the quiet suggestion from a trusted mechanic. Now, if your priority shifts to ghost-level sound and vibration, let me introduce you to a motor that takes manners and turns them into its identity. And if any of this already changed how you think about senior-friendly outboards, tap like so more older boaters see it. And tell us in the comments which engine has been easiest on your hands, back, or nerves. Your comments shape the next rankings. Number 7. Honda BF50 and BF40. There is a certain rhythm to slow cruising that only works if the machinery fades into the background. You want to hear the water, the conversation, maybe a bit of wind, but not feel like you are riding on top of a generator. Among anglers and casual explorers who run at modest speeds all day, that balance is what decides whether a trip feels relaxing or tiring. Honda's small 4-stroke line, especially the BF50 and BF40, has settled into that role almost by default. The BF50 in particular feels more like an automotive engine adapted to the water than a traditional outboard. At idle, the sound is closer to a modern compact car than a buzzing 2-stroke. Vibration levels are low enough that talking with passengers at the stern does not require raised voices. That calm behavior carries through the rev range. You can spend a full day trolling or puttering along without feeling worn down by the machinery. Owners often remark on how forgiving these engines are when maintenance is not perfect. They are not invincible, but they tend to tolerate real-world use, where oil changes occasionally run a little late, or the boat sits longer between outings. That kind of tolerance is valuable for retirees who boat by weather and health, not strict schedules. These Hondas also pair well with smaller, lighter boats that seniors favor when downsizing. A simple, stable skiff with a BF40 on the back can be launched, loaded, and recovered without calling in extra help. For skippers who have felt that sinking feeling when an engine misbehaves, the next workhorse becomes less of an accessory and more of an insurance policy when the wind is up and the dock is near. Number 6. Yamaha T9.9 High Thrust. Every now and then, you come across a small engine that changes how safe a boat feels at low speeds. It is not about charging offshore. It is about creeping into a tight marina with current running and knowing you still have authority over the hull. Seniors who have been surprised by gusts or tricky tides tend to remember those moments, and they rarely want to repeat them. That is where the little workhorse, known as the Yamaha T9.9 High Thrust, earns its reputation. The T-Series gear ratio and larger diameter propeller are designed for one thing: grabbing water at low speed. That is exactly what you need when you are maneuvering slowly in wind, towing a dinghy, or bringing a heavier boat back to the dock. For senior boaters, it means the helm feels lighter and more controlled in tricky situations, because the engine is not cavitating or flaring with every small throttle movement. Electric start and power tilt versions remove most of the physical strain. No yanking on a pull cord, no wrestling the motor up by hand when you want it out of the water. Older owners often describe these features less as convenience and more as non-negotiable. Shoulders and backs only tolerate so much. As a kicker or auxiliary engine alongside a larger main outboard, the T9.9 High Thrust can quietly change the risk profile of a boating day. If the main engine throws a warning or refuses to restart at a bad moment, seniors do not have to rely on flares and radios alone. They have a calm, predictable backup. For those who still run larger boats but want their physical workload to stay small, this kind of redundancy becomes very appealing. And that naturally leads to the bigger question: what about the main power plants themselves? especially on heavier hulls, where seniors do not want to give up range or ride comfort. Number 5. Suzuki DF200A. At a certain point, many retirees move into heavier, more comfortable boats and discover that their old mid-range outboard is no longer enough. The hull rides better, but only if the engine behind it can lift and carry without feeling angry at the extra weight. The challenge is finding that power without stepping into something temperamental or physically punishing to live with. The Suzuki DF200A is one of the quieter answers to that problem. Despite its power rating, this engine is notably light compared to some of its peers. Trimming it up at the ramp or lifting it for service puts less strain on aging muscles and joints. At speed, that lower weight changes how the hull feels over chop. Bow rise is more controllable, and the boat does not feel as though it is pivoting around an iron anchor on the transom. The displacement and gearing are tuned for torque instead of screaming revolutions per minute. That means you can keep the engine in a modest rev band while still holding plane. The net effect is less noise, less vibration, and a helm that does not feel like it is buzzing loose under your hands. Fuel use is respectable for its class, which matters on long days when fuel docks are far apart and retirement budgets are real. Technicians appreciate that the DF200AA uses many familiar Suzuki design themes. It is not an experimental outlier. Parts support is solid, and service procedures are well understood. For a senior boater stepping into a larger boat but not wanting a high-strung showpiece engine, this motor is often a quiet favorite. Even then, seniors want power they can trust for years, and the next engines deliver that. Number 4. Yamaha F150. Walk any busy marina and you will see the same mid-sized 4-stroke bolted to transoms over and over again. It shows up on workboats, family rigs, charter hulls, and aging weekenders that have already seen more seasons than their owners care to count. When a motor ends up in that many different roles, it is usually not because of marketing, it is because it has proven boringly reliable. That is the space the Yamaha F150 has occupied for years. For senior boaters, that track record translates into peace of mind. Many of these engines have thousands of hours behind them, with little more than routine care. That does not mean they are flawless, but it does mean that strange, unpredictable failures are relatively rare. When something does go wrong, there is a high chance that a shop has seen it before and knows exactly what to do. On the water, the F150 has a calm, composed personality. It delivers enough power for a wide range of 20 to 22-foot hulls, without feeling twitchy or jumpy at the controls. At idle, it is smooth enough that long no-wake zones are more about the scenery than the engine sound. At cruise, it settles into a relaxed note that does not grind on your nerves. For older owners, one underappreciated benefit is the size of the installed base. There are many F150s out there. That means parts availability, lots of online information, and a community of owners sharing experience. When you are no longer interested in experimenting, that kind of familiarity becomes a safety net. At some point, though, a few older captains start craving a blend of that stay-sane dependability with a livelier feel, and the motor I am about to show you nails that mix for longer, easier days. Number 3. Mercury 115 Pro XS. Some engines manage to feel lively without turning the boat into something you have to fight. They give you enough punch to make a hull wake up, but not so much that every throttle movement feels like a dare. For older skippers who still enjoy a bit of spirited running on lighter boats, that balance is surprisingly rare. The Mercury 115 Pro XS is one of the few that hits that line cleanly. Its relatively low weight for the power makes a difference at the helm. When you ease into a turn, the boat rotates cleanly without the sense that a heavy mass is trying to shove the transom outward. In a crosswind, the steering loads stay modest, especially with a proper steering system. That matters when you are not interested in wrestling the wheel through every maneuver. The displacement and tuning give it brisk acceleration without needing to explore the very top of the rev range. You can stay in the comfortable middle where noise and vibration are contained, yet the boat still responds. For a senior boater who enjoys a slightly more spirited ride but does not want to feel punished for it, that is a pleasant combination. From a service standpoint, the Pro XS line has matured. The 115 version benefits from the lessons learned on larger siblings. Shops have diagnostic routines down to a science, and parts flow is well established. On the used market, these engines tend to hold value, which can actually be comforting to retirees thinking about eventual resale or a final downsize. Others are done chasing any hint of sportiness at all. For them, we got an engine with a smooth, consistent thrust you barely notice, even after hours at helm. Number 2, Honda BF150. There is a type of outboard you only notice when it is gone. While it is there, trips are uneventful, conversations stay easy, and nothing about the engine becomes a story worth telling at the dock. For senior boaters, that uneventfulness can be exactly what they are paying for. The Honda BF150 is very much that kind of motor. On a suitable hull, the BF150 helps the boat rise onto plane without drama. There is none of the sudden lurch and bow flare that can make older captains feel slightly out of control. Once on plane, the engine pulls steadily, without needing to be prodded up to uncomfortable revolutions per minute. The sound level is modest, which makes conversation in the cockpit easier and reduces the sensation of being battered by the machine. Owners often comment on how settled the boat feels with this engine. Docking maneuvers respond predictably to small throttle movements. In tight marinas or windy slips, that kind of fine control is worth a great deal. You are not fighting surges of power or unpredictable hesitation. For someone whose reaction, times, and physical strength are not what they were decades ago, that gentleness is quietly powerful. The long production run and wide install base mean that most dealerships know these engines well. Parts remain available, and online communities are full of long-term ownership stories. That lends itself to the kind of confidence senior boaters seek when they decide, perhaps for the last time, to repower a beloved hull. Even so, there is one engine that keeps appearing at the very top of technician recommendation lists. When the specific question is asked, if your own parent was buying a boat today, what would you bolt on it? Number 1, Yamaha F90. Ask around quietly, and you will hear the same answer from a lot of technicians when the topic turns to older captains. They will not start by naming a flagship model or the latest digital control experiment. Instead, they talk about a mid-range, 4-stroke that simply makes life easier on a wide mix of real boats. That engine is the Yamaha F90, and it sits at the crossroads of power, weight, and manners that seniors tend to appreciate the most. This quiet favorite is the Yamaha F90, an engine designed with the kind of practical balance that older skippers appreciate more and more as the years go on. It occupies a horsepower range that fits a surprising variety of real-world boats, modest center consoles, lightweight aluminum skiffs, easy-handling bay boats, and family pontoons. That flexibility is important because most senior boaters are not chasing speed. They are chasing comfort, predictability, and a sense of control that does not depend on physical strength. A lot of its appeal comes from how it delivers its power. The F90 shares core architecture with larger Yamaha siblings, yet it is tuned so the torque comes in smoothly and early. That gentle torque curve helps a boat rise onto plane with minimal drama. You do not have to wind the motor into high, uncomfortable revolutions to make the hull respond. For an older boater, that means the hands stay relaxed, the wheel stays calm, and the boat feels composed instead of eager to leap ahead. At idle, this engine practically disappears. The sound softens into a low hum. The vibrations are tamed to the point that long no-wake zones feel more like drifting than motoring, and the boat remains steady even in tight quarters. When it is time to restart, after sitting overnight or after sitting for weeks, the F90 tends to come alive quickly, so long as the basics of fuel and battery health are respected. Serviceability is another part of its quiet appeal. Yamaha dealerships see these engines constantly, which means parts are available. Technicians know their weak points, and troubleshooting rarely turns into an expensive mystery hunt. Senior boaters often comment that the engine feels familiar, even when they have never owned one before, simply because the support network is so extensive. But the most telling vote of confidence comes from the people who work on outboards every day. When asked privately what they would trust for someone who is older, someone who still loves the water but does not want to fight their equipment, the Yamaha F90 surfaces again and again, not because it is flawless, but because it is steady. It asks very little, gives back a lot, and lets older captains enjoy the water on their own terms, quietly confidently, and for years longer than they might expect. In the end, the best outboard for a senior boater is not the one with the highest number on the cowl. It is the one that lets you launch without anxiety, idle without aches, cruise without strain, and come home without wondering whether you are doing this for the last time. The engines on this list are not perfect, but they tilt the odds in your favor. They take some of the work out of staying on the water, so you can keep your attention where it belongs, on the sky, the tide, and the people who came with you. If this helped you see which engines truly keep older boaters safe on the water, tap like so it reaches more seniors. And share in the comments which motor has treated you kindly, or which one ended your confidence. Your stories help others stay boating longer. And if you want more guides built specifically for senior captains, you know where to find the next story.